Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this board meeting of Ebbsfleet Development Corporation. We are recording this meeting. It will be available on our website after the meeting is concluded. Thank you for joining us today. We don't have any members of the public actually in the room with us. You're all as welcome. I would just like to start with apologies. James, any apologies?
Yeah, apologies from Councillor Kite.
Councillor Kite, and we have Fred Marudis is online, one of our nets online with us in the room. Hi, Fred. Any declarations of interest other than the standard declarations of interest which relate to members of the planning committee? No, nothing there. That then brings us on to our part 1 minutes of our meeting of the 7th of May. Excellent set of minutes as always. Are there any comments on that, or can we take them as read as a true and fair record of the meeting? Yep, got the thumbs up on that. Good, thank you very much. Then Ian, do we have any actions following on from largely closed? I can see 2 are open. Is there anything you'd like to draw our attention to?
No, I think they're self-explanatory, Simon. So 0303, we are in preparation. That's in preparation, that document. So it's finalised to get published, and we've started the work, as the note says, on the consideration evaluation of some mission critical roles as the committee discussed at a recent meeting. So they're both in hand.
Great, thank you very much, Ian. Our next meeting is on the 24th of September. We have a forward look there in there. I'm quickly going to say something. I think this is probably going to be my last board meeting as the chair of Ebbsfleet Development Corporation. So I want to say some thanks. I'm going to run through that. Please bear with me. I've been the chair of Ebbsfleet since February 2021. And I'd like to put on the record my thanks to Lord Eddie Lister and the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson for appointing me to the board of Ebbsfleet. Certainly been a lot of water under the bridge since then. A lot of thanks, but firstly I'd like to thank the fantastic team at Ebbsfleet Development Corporation under Ian's leadership. You've all done a wonderful job. You should be very proud of what you've achieved. I'd also like to thank the board. We've got a great board here currently, and there's also, during the period of time that I've been chair, there's been some excellent camaraderie with other board members as well. So we've had a strong board, and I'm sure that will continue to be the case. I particularly enjoyed the fact that we've had both the leaders of Dartford and Gravesham councils on here. So I wanted to put on record my thanks to Jeremy Kite and John Burton for your constructive representation on the board. I think it's very important that you're here representing the communities that you're elected to represent, and also we are waiting for our next Kent County Councillor to be appointed here, and I may not meet them, but I wish them the very best to contribute positively to everything that the Development Corporation is doing moving forward. Importantly, I'd like to thank all of our partner organisations, all of the house builders, all of their contractors. Always got to thank Henley Camland. Whenever I thank house builders, Henley Camland always jump up on social media and say, what about us as well? Everyone's done a fantastic job. We should never forget that these private sector entities put their capital at risk to make things happen. Governments don't make things happen. Private enterprise makes things happen. Hopefully governments don't get in the way, and sometimes they can encourage things to happen. I'd like to thank the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government team. They've been hugely supportive of the Development Corporation over the years, not just during my tenure. So thank you to them, the civil servants. During the course of the last 4.5 years, I think we've taken housing completions from about 2,000 to 5,000. I think we're within 50 of that. I'm sure by the time I'm out the door, we'll be at 5,000. We're certainly knocking on that. You know, those are not just housing completions, though they're places where people live. And I'm, particularly proud, and the board is proud of the residents' surveys, which have shown how people love living in Ebbsfleet and how positive they are of this as a place to live. And I'm particularly pleased that we managed to procure additional vital funding for the Alcadon Educational Campus, which is an absolutely huge building that you can see dominating the Garden City, in order to bring that to fruition, which was very important for the mission of the Development Corporation. To place on record thanks to the team at Homes England, who went through the process to put additional funding into that. Importantly, there's been significant social infrastructure delivered around Ebbsfleet Garden City, and there are 2 community facilities which are in advanced stages now being completed, where additional taxpayer funds have been put in there to make sure that it provides to the community all those facilities which the community deserves. I think Simon caught me taking a picture of a fast track bus stop a little earlier on, which I think is fantastic that we've now got that service running through here. It's always been picked up in the residents' survey how important that is to people, and a very strong public realm as well. Ebbsfleet, now faces a very exciting future in the delivery of Ebbsfleet Central East, subject to government funding, whichever government that may be. That would be essential development on brownfield land around a transport hub in a vanguard new town and city. We can argue about it, whether it's a town or a city, but it's certainly a place that people live and they're proud to live. And I think that Ebbsfleet Central East represents exactly where we should be building houses in a housing crisis for the country. And I'm sure that will come to pass in due course, because of course the land isn't going anywhere. We must ensure that we don't let the spiders win. That is the people who want homes who win, who are the ones who overcome the numerous challenges which are put in front of developing houses in this country. And perhaps fittingly, when there is a state visit from Mr. Macron today, perhaps I can just say au revoir, Ebbsfleet. Thank you. Why don't we move on with the business? Ian, your paper.
Thank you very much. Follow that. Thank you very much, Simon. Very kind words, and all of your support, both to the organisation and myself personally over the time. As I record in the paper, you've never shied away or not been available for any meeting over in Ebbsfleet, and have always been there for us. And that's been hugely beneficial. We've really appreciated your support as an organisation, and Jerry. So thank you.
Thanks, Ian.
We wish you all the best. It's also Fred Rubis' last board meeting as well, Fred. So our thanks to you, my thanks to you. I was able to thank you for chairing ARAC earlier, so very grateful to you for having done that, and really appreciate all the time and the wise counsel that you've provided on the board, and wish you all the very best with your current challenges and future challenges, no doubt in what you do. Very grateful to your support as
it's been an absolute pleasure. Many thanks. You can imagine which one I prefer. I'm sorry to be leaving.
Thank you, Fred, for all your work.
As to my paper, that just wanted, I should have included in my paper a decision for the board to appoint an interim chair of the Audit Risk Committee, in view of the fact that this will be Fred's last meeting. So apologies, I had meant to include it, but it was an error on my part. Having spoken to Nick and to yourself, Simon, that Nick Shattuck is prepared to undertake the role on an interim basis until the board members are appointed, and then a fuller review of appointments to the subcommittees will be undertaken, but we do need to formally approve that as the board, assuming Nick is still willing to do that and intends to approve that. That would be helpful to get that minuted.
Well, I'm sure Nick will do a fantastic job as an interim there. Interim to be defined. So is everyone happy with that?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, looks like unanimously that is now yours, Nick. Well done.
Thank you, Nick. Section 3 of my paper notes that we have now received for budget confirmation and the delegation letter 25-26. So that's very positive. And also within that delegation letter, the ministry increased our CEDAW expenditure delegation from 10 million to 30 million pound per project. So quite a significant increase, which is very welcome. And the delegation for revenue expenditure remains at £500,000 per project. But that's very welcome, as I say. We are still waiting for further announcements and communications post 25-26 following the government spending review announcements in June. On one particular matter, I didn't may well be picked up in Jen's paper later, but because we are imminently about to sign contracts on the Alcadon Hub community building, we have asked the department to allow us to commit funds that would go into 26-27, and we have now had confirmation that we are able to do that. So that means that we can sign that contract when it's ready to be signed. It is again, but it was, I think, an indication of the positive relationship that we have with the ministry on matters like that. So we have now published our 25-26 business plan that went online several weeks ago, so it's available to view. And as you know, we are still sitting on a draft of a corporate plan, which will get finalised once we are made aware of our financial allocations for the latter years of the spending review process. Section 4, we've got the first quarter's performance report in. I think some sort of important points here. It is the first quarter, but at 4.4 you will see we note that quite a significant number of units down at the Cable Wharf scheme have been moved from completion in this year to next year, around 70 odd units in one block of apartments. And that does create a significant risk that we'll actually hit this year's target of 565, because it's quite a substantial sum. And it also has consequences for a couple of the other KPIs that
And what's the reason for them pushing back completion?
Well, I think we are seeing across the area, and it's been a sort of growing concern, the demand for apartments has definitely eased. A number of the house builders are reporting difficulty selling apartments.
This is more a first-time buyer product,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah, and I think that, together with the lack of appetite from registered providers to take up housing stock, which are often apartments as well, not always, but often, the sort of combination of those two factors has seen, not just at Cable Wharf, but in other developments as well. We know that there are similar issues at Ashmead. They've got a couple of blocks of apartments that have they are struggling to sell. So I think that house builders are now, if they've started them, they're slowing construction down. And if they have the choice, they are probably not starting them until they've either got a forward buyer, or they could be sort of more confident in the market. But we are, as I say, we are seeing that not just at Coburn, but elsewhere as well.
So these are private apartments. It's a block, and has it slowed down, or they've just not started? If they're talking about completion to July 2026, they must have started.
Yes.
So they're basically slowing down.
Yeah.
And are they private or hybrid?
They're private. They have been selling various bits of market properties onto some other RPs down there. They've passed them to places for people, for example. So things over and above the Section 106. At the moment, this is a market block. But yeah, obviously that they may have a deal coming, which may change that.
So it's entirely possible as we go through the year, we may see more impact from this developers.
This is not a localised phenomenon. This is happening all over.
Yeah, and it's probably, if anything, it's been a little bit slower
to here.
to get to here, but we are now writing quite large numbers. Other units, non-apartment units, the sales rates are slower than they were, but then they were phenomenally fast in the past. So the sales rates have been moderated by most of the house builders, but they are still selling since the apartments are sticking for sure. So.
But we have now commissioned a report, haven't we, into the sort of housing market generally, and it's not going to be a panacea, but when will we get the results of that?
I don't think we've got anything specific commissioned.
Sorry, it was in the second set of papers actually. Don't worry, thank you.
I think there's generally, two things which have exacerbated the current situation. One is stamp duty. There was a hump there, first time buyer stamp duty reductions, but also there isn't a kind of an equity loan scheme. So again, that is there, and I think there's a particular issue with first time buyers, which is probably affecting this part of the market. It's
Sure.
I think the other thing is service charges.
Yeah,
it is scaring people off.
That's likewise, that's a significant additional cost item of buying. All right, then let's crack on.
Okay, so results of the board effectiveness review are there for any comment from the board, and then in the annexes you've got the detailed breakdown of the performance in the first quarter. As you can see, in terms of the key actions, they are nearly all green. The amber one relating to a couple of transport projects which were on hold, waiting for the new transport project manager. They're now in situ, so we would hope to see those progress shortly. We need to give Tola a few weeks to settle in before we expect him to turn this green, but hopefully take too long to start moving. So, I did want to note that on page 4 of that particular paper, there's an action here for us to implement and embed the new requirements of the Procurement Act, which came in February. At ARAC this morning, ARAC considered a revised procurement and contract management policy, which has been amended to reflect the new Act. That was agreed this morning, so that will come to the next board meeting for sign off. So, and in the meantime, training is going to get underway for the staff on the changes to that. So I'll stop there and see if there's any other questions.
Right, board. I'll bring you in a second. I'm going to draw attention to board effectiveness review. I think that's generally a positive thing there. Draw attention to, I think, the strongest one and the weakest one. Strongest one is the chair leads the meetings well. It's an excellent group of responses there, everyone. To be commended on that. 71% strongly agree, 2 agree, and no outliers. That's good. In terms of the weakest one, however, there is the right amount of visibility and interaction with the sponsor department. Certainly do better there. But the action and responsiveness of the sponsor department enables the board to deliver on its objectives. There, only one person agreed, and the rest neither agreed or disagreed. So it's probably the weakest one. So perhaps to make the best value out of board effectiveness reviews, people can focus on areas where we can improve things. It's a complex project. It needs the necessary support and continuity of support in order to achieve objectives. Neil, can I bring you in?
Just on fast track, notice Ian that you say that fast track going through Whitecliff to Blue Water starting in the summer.
Yep.
And then later in the report, we've got a note about the tunnel.
Yep.
And I know you can get to Blue Water without going through the tunnel. I just wanted to, so it will begin not going through the tunnel.
Correct.
And then once the tunnel's done.
Yeah.
Up and running.
That's exactly right. So that's always been the plan. So service will start operating through it at the moment. As you know, it goes to a turning head at the end of Castle Hill and then goes back. But from in the summer, I think the trial period begins on the 4th of August. There'll be a couple of weeks trial and then the service will start operating. But it will go up to a roundabout. It's called the Hedge Place roundabout, and then into Blue Water until the tunnels are completed. And they'll go straight through.
What's that traffic like? Does it get backed up for getting through that, or a pinch point, or not?
I mean, one of the main rationale, business case for the tunnel is at certain times of that roundabout, and will be a problem in traffic terms because when Blue Water is very busy, then that roundabout would be a problem. So that is one of the main rationale for it. But it is at certain times of the year, really. I mean, day to day, it's not that tough to be there. So
It'd be really good to see the buses running on that
absolutely.
dedicated route that's been there without buses running on them.
And they run at the moment
Yeah.
down to Castle Hill, and I think the service is to be reasonably well used. And the all electric buses, some of them are running on there as well. So that's been really good to see.
That means though that some people will benefit from a fast track stop prior to the tunnel getting through and use it once the tunnel's live, which may cause.
That depends whether there's a stop between where it leaves the dedicated route and goes into. There may not be any stops there, so I couldn't tell you where the stops are. But
It's worth looking at. There may be some disappointment as a result of having
but
that
it's a
opportunity of
very,
using it.
it's quite a short. So if you were on that route on the road that would take you up to the Hedge Place roundabout, it's only a couple hundred yards long.
Okay,
So
so they can reach it easily.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Not going to be very far.
And hopefully it'll be going through the tunnel before too long anyway.
Before too long, yes.
I know there've been slight,
I can give an update
Later.
in my paper, yes.
well done, all those involved.
Absolutely, well done. Any other comments on this? This paper's for noting. All right, that's duly noted. Ian, thank you very much. Caroline, Marketing and Communications.
I'll take the paper thread, but I would like to walk you through a couple of key points. It's been a busy couple of months for us. I'd like to provide you an update on the work that has gone into the early market engagement with regards to the Ebbsfleet Central contractual opportunity. Significant attention went into utilising digital advertisement spots across key industry outlets to promote the early market engagement event, and recognising that this was a first of opportunity for us, we really took the time to make sure that we utilised kind of strong branding and paid revenue opportunities across those outlets. Positively, from utilising those advertising slots, there was significant coverage along outside a number of other outlets. So there was, on the whole, really good coverage, particularly within kind of industry-led coverage. And then when we got to the webinar in and of itself, it ran really smoothly. A lot of attention was taken to make sure we had a really strong presentation from both the Ebbsfleet Central team and supported by M3. It went really well without a technical glitch in sight, and it was held at M3's offices in London. Positively from that, we had really positive feedback from people who attended the webinar, both across our social media and those who took the time to follow up and give us praise on the information given throughout that webinar. On the whole, I believe we had circa 170 sign-ups to receive either the information pack or to attend the webinar, which again, as I said, for the first kind of opportunity we've had to explore this type of advertising, I think is really, really positive. And as they say, a lot of interest generated across the 3 locked opportunities for Ebbsfleet Central, and I'm sure that Jen will cover further information on that. But on the whole, I think it was just a really, really positive opportunity for us to try something new in the way that we approach advertising and generating that momentum for Ebbsfleet Central as a project. For summer campaigns, we're continuing throughout summer to promote some really strong community-led events. We've had a number of bike repair and ride sessions, which I know that Kevin is covering in his paper. These have been really popular with residents across the communities, and our focus certainly for this year, for this event and similar events, is to create regular touch points across multiple neighbourhoods rather than kind of having everything Castle Hill centric. We're also looking forward to this weekend an event called Curious Gardens in Cable Wharf, which is being delivered with Blueprint Art. So we've been supporting the marketing and engagement for that to make sure that there's good attendance. Anecdotally, from residents, excited again to go to another neighbourhood and have some fun activities as we go into the summer. And then finally, I'd just like to draw your attention to social media. We've had a bit of a mixed bag this month, but some of the interesting points that I've taken away, certainly from Facebook, is that it's clear for this period that we have had strong content reach from those who are not our followers. On one hand, this is really popular. It shows that it's really positive. It shows that our content is popular and relevant to people that are outside of those who follow us, but it shows that there's work that we can be doing to drive people to our Facebook pages and make sure that they know that there's that one-stop shop for information that they need. With regards to Instagram, just to be transparent, and we had a bit of a downturn, which you can see in the red for that performance period. I think that is purely due to the success of the Weldon drone footage that we promoted last month, that we've had previous conversations at board meetings around the benefit of mixed media, so trying to mix the resources that we show to residents. Clearly, it shows that drone is very popular, video is very popular, so we need to make sure that we keep that up and continue to offer a good mix of medium. So moving forward over the next couple of months, we'll just be paying particular attention to driving people to like and follow our social accounts to ensure that we're able to consistently provide the information that residents want and need. And then finally, I can't take credit for it, but we have shared it across our socials and it has performed very well. There's a fantastic drone footage by Hayne Tillett-Steele of the Alpenden School. I've included it in the paper. Really, really worth a watch. It shows the scale and the momentum of the project. As I say, I can't take credit, but it is one of our best performing posts. It's been really well received by residents across our socials. So that's a whistle-stop tour. I'm happy to take any questions.
I see the school shoot.
Yeah, really lovely.
Any questions, board? Yes, Simon.
So in terms of the early market engagement, great the number of engaged, but have we got the right blend of contractors within that? Have we reached into the areas we hoped we would?
Yeah, we've done some assessment on that on the current half, yeah, and we're quite pleased at the reach across different tiers of contractors to respond to different lots. So yeah, no, it's been quite positive. There were, of course, within that also people that are probably more interested in, say, being part of the supply chain to some of those main contractors as well. But yeah, no, very pleased with the sort of mix and diversity of interest.
All right, so the messaging is it's all the areas.
I think the benefit of having the kind of secondary promotion through the press releases and other outlets picking up it expanded the publicity for the opportunity, and we're currently running reports. Certainly from my end, I'm still awaiting some of the metric performances back from those outlets, but they will provide a breakdown of kind of ROI, so return on investment, click-through rates, and then who from particular industries have kind of targeted that uptake.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Board, any other comments, observations? Yes.
Just a quick one, really. It was, quite noticeable drop, as you were saying, in terms of both Facebook and Instagram hits. And my first thought when I read that was kind of linked to the earlier paper and whether it reflects actually a downturn in the market. And the second thought was, well, gosh, is there a way that perhaps we could be doing to promote housing opportunities that are coming on?
Yeah, of course. I think it's always worth mentioning that our socials do fluctuate, and I think that often goes alongside with the opportunities that arise kind of to post and engage with residents. Certainly from Facebook and Instagram's perspective, when there's events, summertime, or particularly when there's opportunities for employment or learning initiatives, that's when our socials really tend to thrive, because there's something for people to click and get involved in. And again, getting people excited about community buildings is really good at engagement. Certainly on LinkedIn, we have seen consistent growth, and that is kind of in part from the momentum of our projects and being able to tell that story. It's also in part of being able to get wider colleagues on board with kind of sharing those good news stories to their networks as well. And we're certainly seeing that there's a correlation between performance on LinkedIn and that kind of wider engagement from colleagues and certainly members of the board as well, sharing it across their networks.
It was slightly across purposes, actually. I mean, you're great. You're right. The LinkedIn stuff is great, actually, and really powerful, impressive, actually, the increased hits there. My point was, I mean, all the developers have websites and, the means of promoting the developments as they come online. Circulate those, resell those, because
I think it's really important for us, and it's kind of embedded in our strategy to focus on the stories of opportunities of life in Ebbsfleet. I think we're really cautious to have some kind of separation between house builders and people's experiences in terms of kind of purchasing and moving to Ebbsfleet, and hopefully it becomes, EDC and Ebbsfleet Fund City socials become something that they can lean to once they've embedded themselves and want to experience life in Ebbsfleet. Having said that, we do always kind of keep an eye on people's experiences of moving to Ebbsfleet. We've recently published a what we hope is a helpful guidance document in terms of supporting residents in some of the complexities around service charge. It's in the report again. It was certainly a strong performing post, and that was just from content and posts that we had seen online about resident groups around those who had recently moved to the area, and as you had mentioned, confused about the complexities of service charge. So where it's appropriate for us to kind of dip into that house builder side of things, we will, but our strategy is very much focusing on Ebbsfleet on the whole, life in Ebbsfleet on the whole.
That's helpful, and I can see that also helps. So that helps us, of course. Yeah, thank you.
All right, Simon.
Can I just follow up that point? Because looking at the media cuttings, press cuttings you put in, there are a couple of quite challenging ones, so particularly around Springhead and some of the housing management issues that there are in that part of the the city. So are there things that we can do practically to hold those management companies to account in all the things that we are doing?
Yes, indeed. So the management company referred to in those articles is the same as management company that also operates in Castle Hill across the Taylor Wimpey development at Waterside. And we have been discussing the issues that residents feel very strongly about, particularly in side, with ward councillors, local MP, a meeting a couple of weeks ago about that. I've been exchanging correspondence over the last several months with Taylor Wimpey themselves to hold them to account, because it's the house builders that appoint the managing agents and have the contractual relationship with them. So, yeah, we have been getting involved in those issues, less so directly at Springhead, but yeah, we're now aware it's the same company to say that are operating there.
Right, Simon, is that? Yep.
Well, I think it's important because, picking up what you made earlier about, it's the look and feel and experience of people that are living in this, which is important. So they're going to be running source from their experiences with the management companies. That's something clearly that as a corporation that we need to, be investing our time into helping to resolve.
And as John pointed out, made the point about the service charges, and a part of what residents feel very strongly about and strongly to is quite significant increases in those charges year on year, and it's a very complicated situation across, not just here, because the phenomenon of management companies is across the country. But some of the situations we're dealing with here, for example, out in Whitecliff, you've got some people paying multiple service charges to two different management companies. And the note that Caroline referred to was our initiative to try and help to explain what is a quite complex situation to residents in terms that are understandable, but without it being guidance from us, because we're not in a position to legal guidance or anything, but just to provide some explanation, which hopefully people find useful. But it is a significant issue across the Garden City and elsewhere across the country.
I want to just come in this.
Yes.
On the service charge element, it is a major issue in here. And I understand the issue about cost of buying properties and the discounts, etc. I understand, but I think the major thing putting people off is the service charge, uncertainty of it. What is it for? Who's getting it? What's the involvement of the people being service charged for in the issue itself? And we were talking in those.
Can I
sometime back about actually bring them together?
Even though that wasn't a prior issue, what's made it an issue now?
I think when you go around talking to residents, the way it's jumping around and the quality of the work being done.
Yeah.
It's the combination of the two.
Yeah.
Some have got very high bills, others seem to have had their bills reduced with no real explanation. The bills dramatically increasing. Then if you walk around some of the areas, you think, well, is anybody doing anything?
Yeah.
So you've had big bills for what? So if you're trying to get a comprehensive pattern of a garden city, garden town, whatever you want to call it, of a standard, that would require the service charge to actually pay for that. But I think people will feel more comfortable with a part of that billing and understand how the bill was put together than it just being done to them.
Yeah.
That's the big part of the problem. And we were talking about as a board, actually bringing all that as part of the general management of it, that we'd come under our umbrella so people would have an involvement in it, feel part of it. I think we have to look at that again.
Well, I think that, there is an issue here when you're creating new places, in my view, about the patchwork of management of places. And, perhaps this is something the government should be focusing on when they're thinking about new towns and new cities, is this kind of management, continuity of that across a place in order to control, both the cost of it, but ensure there is, value for money in terms of delivery.
Well, I could say, over many years, as a board, have been looking at the whole issue, as you say, John, of trying to achieve a consistent, comprehensive, high quality management regime. One of the big lessons from Ebbsfleet is because we weren't established until 2050 to really look at that issue. Many of those estate management companies already existing, set up, and that sort of stuff we rehearsed at the time when we established the Garden City Trust, which is the answer, but only partially the answer, because those estate management companies existing. The trust have a very sensible, appropriate strategy at the moment of seeking to influence those estate management and providing support to residents. Ultimately, we started off looking to see whether the trust that we were establishing could get control of those estate management and get that consistent approach. But that's going to take time to get to that, and it's dependent on but that's definitely where we want to head up. On the cost, the rising costs, again, a part of the strategy for establishing the trust is then, as you know, to provide income stream to the trust so that other parts of the Garden City, like the strategic parts and community buildings, won't fall under the service charge regime. They will be funded outside of that in order to help mitigate those costs. But it is a national issue, and the government is looking at further reforms to control some of the worst practices and to even to create different legal structures, leaseholds to other structures. I agree with you, John, that ultimately residents should have control and influence over the management regime and the management company. In some instances, they will get that at some point. Of course, it does depend on them being prepared to take on those responsibilities. But that's not the case with all management companies that exist. Not all of them actually pass to the residents, but often they will do. They need to be supported then to be able to manage those situations, which is the trust will aim to do. So.
Is that enough, John, for the moment?
For the time being, but I think the big problem is going to be patchwork situation. Each management company and the works we're doing in the way of environmental work around the building and development coming through planning has a whole range of different types of finishes. And I would imagine some will try and take over the management with a view of dumbing down the garden element, so you've got less bills. But how do you then manage that if you want an overall pattern of what it's meant to look like? And if you've got a mismatch of hedges versus grass versus flowers versus flowering trees, all with different management costs, everybody will drive towards the bottom to get your bills down. So I think we do need to get some sort of management of it if you want to have a uniform look and work carefully towards that. I can see it's a nightmare to sort out. You're going to have the difference between flats being 1, 2, 3 bedroom houses, 1, 2, 3 bedroom. How do you differentiate that between different states? It's a nightmare to solve, but it needs sorting.
Yeah, and we have been feeding that message, certainly where we've had engagement with the task force, that to get that consistency, you need to have your stewardship strategy set right at the very outset.
Yeah.
We didn't have that for you, so you were trying to do something retrospectively, which is doubly hard. But the government have definitely been listening to that. The New Towns Task Force definitely listening to that. So the point that Simon made about influencing future places, that is the key lesson. You need that strategy in from day one, because as soon as houses start being sold and estate managements are created, you're trying to put it back in a box and it doesn't want to get back in a box very easily. So you've got to do it right at the outset.
Our difficulty then, from what you've been saying, is this must be the case that the service charges are set, the management companies are set up, you get this patchwork. So it's all very well saying, well, if you're going to set up more development corporations, new towns, do it differently, which I completely agree with. Yeah. But how do we then do something here is what we need to think about. And is there any way that, although this in some ways could be seen to take the management further away from the people, where we want to achieve the opposite, which is that the existing management companies have the existing legal agreements with the homeowners. They then have to, they could pool their resources through the trust, but there'll be different charges on different places. But it seems to me that that's about one of the, because you can't just redo the whole thing. No. You'd have to do something like that, which would be immensely complex because some homeowners are paying one charge, some are paying another.
Yep.
But if you pay it all into
all under different agreements,
yes,
different management companies.
Yep. But if they all then paid into the trust, then you get the kind of consistent management across the Garden City, but it would be really complex to do.
Hugely complex
Yep.
to do, and Valerie is trustee. I was able to say what discussion I had, but I know from my conversations with Mark Patchett that the trust have discussed these matters in the past. Ideally, yes, I think the conversations we had, the trust was even set up, was it'd be good to get control of all those state management companies. But that was unachievable, at least in the short term, probably in the medium term, really complex legally. I know the trust have discussed actually the next best option, which is to proactively support residents in those situations where they're either running the management company or they are having issues with managing agents and management companies, to support, provide expertise and guidance to do that. It's not the optimum, but achieving the optimum is really, really difficult. So I think it's a question of doing what we can. We're very active in this space to try and help residents, support residents, what are quite complex matters.
I think the problem is, I hear what you're saying about the existing 5,000 units. I think it was the unit. To pick all that is going to be hard work.
Yeah.
To put it back together in a comprehensive, better plan, hard work. I fully accept that. But if the original target was 15,000 and we're only a third way in, to me, you've got a big opportunity on 2/3 of it to get the control. You can then show to the 1/3, actually, we're controlling this reasonably. You've got an input, good quality, and as their managing companies come up for renewal, it can be folded into the trust to take over. If you don't grasp it at some point, so right, we're taking it over for all these new builds coming in. When you appoint somebody, you appoint us. We'll sort it out.
Well, I suppose the logical place there would be for Ebbsfleet Central to have management of that area from a consistent party offering the same service all across it. Can influence that because we're effectively bringing forward the development.
And that's always been the intention. We've been in discussion with Mark about that for the whole time. So
Which is a relatively easy and straightforward thought process, and any dense urban regeneration would have a single point of management. However, there is a thought process about your point, the 10,000 units still to go, to actually coming up with a planning policy that molds thought process. I know they've got outline planning. However, as planning authority, we should have a structure in mind as to how we think the next 10,000 homes are going to be.
Okay. Can I just, so on the number, quoting 10,000, there's 6,250 out here behind us on Whitecliff, which has already got a management company, already sort of set and in trade. That's not therefore something that you can take out of that. So you've got, say, over 6,000. You've got Ebbsfleet Central, which is 3,500. So between those two alone, you've got 9,500 units. We could definitely do something about Ebbsfleet Central. Difficult to do much more than what we're doing at over Whitecliff, which is 6,050. And then you've got Red Road 900, Springhead Park 600. There isn't, other than Ebbsfleet Central, there is very little else that we have any ability to.
Well,
so just
so I understand that.
It's not.
EQL have a planning consent and outline consent, and they have a management vehicle. However, the residents of Ebbsfleet are, when they're looking for help, it's either going to be Dartford, Gravesham, or it's us to deliver a better outcome. So I do think it's worthwhile us having a very material look at how we could do this better and how we mould the trust process into it, because otherwise you are going to say that the next, this problem is only going to get worse. So unless we intervene, then we're going to be sitting here with bad headlines, which are going to be increasingly damaging to absorption rates and similar, and sense of place and sense of a garden city. So I think it's just not acceptable to say it's jolly difficult and our hands are slightly tied behind our back. We are sitting in the middle of a major new development. We've got to do better. It says top thumping. Wearing a make Ebbsfleet great again hat.
Yes, Valerie.
So
Make us sound better than that.
observation, which is that currently the trust is a completely separate legal entity. The trustees have discussed this, and I think there's an aspiration. It's a kind of head and heart thing. But actually, when we discuss it around the table, if you're along the spectrum, there are some that are absolutely, oh, great, yes, hands on, let's go for it, and others that are completely at the other end of the spectrum. I mean, in theory, if we got it right, it could be a great opportunity indeed for the trust, because you could have a commercial subsidiary, couldn't you? All profits, don't pay tax on it, reinvest into the trust, actually for the greater good. But the truth is, the agenda that the trustees have at the moment is quite burdensome. We have a very detailed business plan, which is under stress in many respects. We're about to take on at least 2 properties from a standing start, community centres where there's no trade at all at the moment and where we're taking all the risk. So it's not so that we wouldn't do it. Actually, there's quite a lot of positive thinking, not least because the resident trustees share the same views about management agents as being expressed around this table. But I think there has to be realism about the volume of work, the capacity literally that the trust has, and if you like, the risk appetite of the trustees. That's not to say it wouldn't happen, but I think it's premature just to assume
my
my
diatribe, not my diatribe, my direction of thought process about the wider corporation, not the trust.
So thank you for the clarification.
It's,
The trust is a potential vehicle, but ultimately
Yeah.
we need to do better.
Set up a
Right.
limited company or something.
it's quite an exercise, but should we be looking at for the various areas across the Garden City which exist at the moment, what the management structures are, who's undertaking it, what the charges are, what functions they're discharging, at least to have a picture of what's out there at the moment before we even consider what might be an appropriate overarching transfer mechanism for that to try and get consistency. John?
Yeah, I agree. I think it is important we try and do something, because if we understand what the issue, we understand there's a problem. We don't know how to solve the problem necessarily. But the EDC at some point in the future, and depending on your view, will either be short term, medium or long term, will disappear anyway. And we need therefore somebody to be taken over that responsibility. The trust is the obvious place. I understand their hesitation in doing it because of the role and the risks of doing it. Totally get on board with that. It seems to me an opportunity where we know there's a national problem. We're actually saying we identify what the issue is, what the funding will be required to sort out the problem, present that to government as a work stream. And say, right, come and work with us in Ebbsfleet to set a proper system up that the residents themselves will be part of the trust, responsible for it, it pays for itself. And if you think, I've got a parish in my constituency,
Right.
where they maintain their own grass, their own play areas, they do it very, very well. As a parish council, they own all the land, they cut down the trees, they maintain the trees, you need permission from them to do everything like that. They're really good.
Yeah.
And the community love them. There's no problems there with that. Well, you need to get that connection between it's their tree, their bit of grass and their bill better than is being experienced for residents at the moment.
Well, I think it's certainly, I don't think it really does very much for residents here. Say, oh, let's try and encourage government to fix it for new cities and towns. They're going to think, well, what about where I live in Ebbsfleet? So I think we should get a view of what the arrangements look like. As you say, John, there'll be areas which are parished perhaps within this, where they're discharging certain, there's a precept, but they're discharging certain functions there. So I think it would be useful to have a map of how it's working across here, quantums, the services being provided, at least for the board then to consider.
They're effectively paying into a parish without any say on the parish.
Yes.
The problem.
So you go and parish the whole area. I don't know if the parish wants to
But
extend
it doesn't overcome the problem of who's managing it, unless you get somebody managing it.
Yeah.
And that's the issue. If you go to Vico Parish, the one I mentioned, they manage the area. So you get an additional charge on the parish precinct to do that.
Yes.
And people accept that. Because they can, if they don't like the people, the parish councillors, they can change them. You can't do that with the management company.
And indeed, parish precepts aren't capped either. So
It's a good thought.
well, look, I suggest, why don't you come in?
Well, I know we can't go on discussing this forever. I appreciate that. But you've made a suggestion, Simon, that we obtain information. So I suppose we need to make a decision on how that would be done. I mean, I think there are so many different issues that we're not going to resolve now. They prefer to using the planning system to some lever. I'm not sure how that would be done, but we can look at that. And it also seems there's a distinction between service charges which are levied on a block of flats to pay and those which are for the wider public areas.
Yes.
And the discussion here seems to be on the wider public areas.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, if we're going to look for information, should we restrict it to have the wider public areas are funded? Because otherwise it's going to be massive.
We know all of
Got that.
we things that might have moved on a bit, but when we put in place the business case for the trust and looked at the options for the trust versus parishing and a whole range of things looked at. Mark Patchett, who's now running the trust, working for us at the time, looked at all the arrangements that exist across the Garden City, the different management regimes that exist. So we have all of that information. It is a patchwork, there's no doubt about it, because we pride ourselves in the number of house builders that have been here, and that's resulted in the impact, but they've all got their own arrangements. So, you know, de facto, then you end up with quite a lot of different management regime, which isn't where we would want it to be. And that was all very clear when we developed the strategy behind the trust, was to try to achieve cohesion and high fidelity. We can by all means look at it again, but I do need to remind the board, we looked at this quite hard in establishing and coming up with a strategy for the trust as to what we could do. And the trust was established to be that vehicle to provide the long-term stewardship and get as much consistency as is possible to do. And it is a question of the extent to which you can get those management companies that exist under some form of influence control of the trust. So we have the vehicle to do that. That's why the trust was set up. We've got a strategy to fund that trust. Again, we agreed this at the time that we recognised it was going to have to be a mixed funding model with some service charges and some endowment, which is the strategy that we've been following. And we are partway through implementing that approach. But yeah, it is complicated and difficult.
I only raise that as a question, are we deciding to ask anybody to do anything now, or are we just going to reflect on it?
I personally, and I think it would be worth just refreshing that piece of work from 4 years ago, whatever it was done, such that we can bring that up to date. And many of us weren't here at that time, so I think it would be helpful for us to understand that, to understand the remit of the various management organisations, particularly relating to softening our landscaping, and how that sits across the primary areas of our city.
All right, is everyone comfortable to do that?
Do that.
Yeah, all right.
Can I ask Caroline one question on her paper?
Okay, very quickly, just to play. Ian, how long are you going to need on it? The next board meeting is the 24th of September. Something we brought back to that.
Yeah, because it's
Yes. Okay. So the next board meeting, 24th of September. Enjoy, everyone. So, all right, good. Nick.
So Caroline, bearing in mind the different high differential in the editorial, is there anything that any lessons learned, any thought processes we had between what happened with the Telegraph as opposed to the sun on the mirror gushing with praise?
Yes, so
What lessons learned?
yes, so just to flag, the Sun was a piece that they wrote all by themselves. We didn't have any prior engagement with them. We had the Telegraph here, and I think there have certainly been reflections on how we engage with the media to kind of at optimum times to kind of promote our momentum and successes on our terms. We continue to welcome opportunities to engage with the press, but I think certainly a lesson from our kind of press coverage in the round. I think there's certainly kind of more we can be doing in the future to try and shape where we feature. And I've expressed it before, I think there's opportunity for us to hold more weight in industry coverage, where we can shape that narrative, certainly from a technical perspective. And I think that's a key reflection that we took away after reviewing the coverage that's included in this board paper, is that a focus certainly needs to be gaining that traction and that positive coverage amongst specialist industry outlets. and trying to proactively shape the narrative in kind of national media coverage, rather than the kind of reactive standpoint that we've taken.
Because I mean, the construction news always wants to write about new contracts coming up, who gets them, who's winning them, et cetera, et cetera. So that's always a relatively easy thing to do. But otherwise, actually, we're selling to the consumer, aren't we? The people who want to be coming to Ebbsfleet to tell them all about the upside of living in Ebbsfleet. And actually, national coverage from the Telegraph or Times, whatever, they're always going to dig deeper, review the history, et cetera, and it takes a long time to people forget about the fact that land security's had this thing for 25 years, did nothing with it. Actually, it's post 2014.
They're looking for a story, aren't they?
Et cetera, et cetera. So, because I had such negative reaction. Clearly, I know too many Telegraph readers, but so many people have said, well, Ebbsfleet's a disaster on the back of that Telegraph article. And actually, you could say, well, no, it's, you know, certainly we're the most successful selling site in the country. Have a look at the, you know, the school and the momentum is fantastic. But actually, if we chose our, we need to think very carefully, particularly we now need to think about how we're going to get retailers to be thinking about Ebbsfleet Central and all of that sort of stuff. We need to.
Yeah, look, my view on that, look, inevitably, where you're going to end up with a story around Ebbsfleet is it's taken an awful long time to get to here. How are you going to solve a housing crisis with, you know, X number of 100,000 per annum net migration, you know, entries to the country? You've already got a deficit of 4.5 million homes. Seems to be taking an awful long time to build this new city. That's where the story is naturally going to go, unless you drive the story yourself and you've got a story around what you're doing. If you just organically allow the papers to say something, that's the natural place the story comes out, because it's the obvious question that anyone's going to ask about housing policy, new towns and whatever. You know, that's my view. That's where you're going to end up. You know, here's one. It's taken a long time to get to there. 50,000 homes. It's not going to be done till, you know, 2014. Oh, you know, how the hell do we, you know?
But I think if I can just speak to in summary, you know, good news doesn't sell. I think we made a strong strategic choice after the Telegraph article came out to have a consistent flow of positive stories, particularly across our LinkedIn and digital. Yeah. So, you know, the worst thing we could have done is try and combat any negative narrative in national press with trying to gain presence in another media outlet. I think that would have come back on us really quickly.
Yeah, sure. Of course.
We made the strategic choice to promote our successes across LinkedIn, which I think is demonstrated in the fact that our presence on LinkedIn continues to grow. And that's, I think, a slightly more modern take on how you can use digital media to reshape the narrative, where, as you say, kind of traditional printed press will always seek to find that greater story that is often quite politicized or entrenched in legacy news, whereas digital platforms just give you that opportunity to reposition yourselves and show, you know, and counteract the negative statements with what is happening here and now and the good stories that are flowing daily, weekly for our residents.
Yeah, look, I agree. You know, I think some of that could be good to get more video content around these events out there for Ebbsfleet, because that does give, you know, your strongest advocates are people who live here, you know, and the experiences they're having and whatever. But I completely agree with the strategy you've adopted there, because otherwise the thing, you know, Ebbsfleet just gets caught up in this political football, basically.
Just a quick question. What have you done to get to explain and influence the key influencers in Parliament, i.e. the two MPs? Because they're in the corridors up there, they're talking to the ministers. Ministers are picking up and reading the Telegraph and the negativity in the Telegraph. Therefore, it must be true. It's in black and white. It's in the paper. As politicians, we all know what's in black and white and what's true aren't always on the same page. But what are we doing?
Well,
What did you do?
Have either of them asked to come over here?
Have they? I don't know.
So
I know there's
They were both written to when they were,
yeah, so
wrote to both of them when they were elected,
Yeah.
invited them over. Neither of them have turned up.
no, that's not.
All right, have they? All right.
So Jim Dixon has been over and visited.
All right, well done, Jim.
We now have, I've got a call catch up with Jim tomorrow. So Jim has been very active in the area. He's been part of the conversations around the issues with management agents on development here. We now have a regular slot catch up with Jim. We've had no contact like that with the
Lauren's been working Springhead and Cable.
we haven't had any.
She's been working with the communities now. But she needs to talk to you. There's other things going on. You want influence.
You was on the planning committee, John,
I know she was.
so she knows the individuals.
I do know that.
Yeah.
I put her there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the Secretary of State then put her there.
So
No, I put a name forward.
Yeah.
We nominate Secretary of State confirmed.
Yeah.
That's the way it works.
Secretary of State put her there.
So from, in terms of launching sites, at Filton, Greenwich, Wembley, it's not about print and press. It's about getting on BBC, getting on ITV, getting on Channel 4, getting on Sky with some great graphics and a good video, which you give them, with fly through, etc., whether it's and then 40 seconds of whatever item they're going to get on ITV London, BBC London, or whatever the right thing is your video, followed by 2 sound bites, and you just got to be prepared for the curly, the tough questions. Well, Ebbsfleet's been a disaster, hasn't it? To which you go, no, that was in the past. It's biggest selling, fastest selling, etc., etc. That we got to get that whole mindset and momentum. But actually, it's about video, social media, and the broadcast media, not about getting up articles in so much, because that's where you're going to get so much hit bang for your buck. No one who reads a Telegraph is going to buy a flat in Ebbsfleet.
I'm sure there are Telegraph readers in Ebbsfleet.
Or the bank.
Or debates.
Other than for their staff.
Sure, there are. Please write into us if you're a Telegraph reader in Ebbsfleet. So, all right, look, I think this is.
Very happy for that to be brought.
I think, look, this is a difficult area. You're never going to control the national media. It's going to be politicised. But Caroline, look, I think you've done the right thing. To take it on would have been counterproductive. I think the content which has been coming out is very good. It's that softer community side to it, which is, I think, quite impactful. But the national debate will rage on, I'm sure. All right, good work. Thank you. Good debate there. Planning, design and delivery report. Mark, what's going on?
Thank you, Simon. Yes, there are a few updates, probably from when the paper was written. Just a few things to highlight. Yes, so we approved a small sports pavilion at the education campus this month, so that will support the temporary school use as well as the dual use of the facility moving forward. And Norfolk Riverside, we have been notified of a bit of a delay to the Cable Wharf School, so we're expecting that to be completed around spring 2026 now, rather than the January that's in the paper. Just to highlight that the application for Abacus Corner was submitted this month, so that's a good step forward.
How many homes is that?
That's 68 homes and a retail unit. We approved an application for the change of use of the Berkeley factories. That will allow for more logistics and distribution uses down there.
Can I ask on that? Does that trigger whatever self-purchase agreement they got on there? Because I think they had a buy, didn't they?
I think they had someone lined up. We haven't been notified that anything's happened since the approval. So,
okay. Yeah.
There was an item in the paper just under Norfolk West employment land. We have been notified that 2 of the 3 parcels in the triangle land, so that's the section of land immediately next to tarmac, had been sold. We understand that has actually fallen through. Met with the landowner down there the other day, and there seems to be a good sort of mixed strategy just in terms of bringing forward various components of that. Some good news. One of the team went out to look at Ebbsfleet green allotments earlier. And the snagging list items, benches, plants, bits and bobs seems to be generally covered now. So we're trying to get some confirmation from them as to whether all of the work is done, and separately the trust are having discussions around taking on that facility. Ian and I had an interesting meeting with the new owners of the Swanscombe Development LLP on Tuesday. So that sale went through last
We're
Monday.
in a position to say who was acquired.
I think we are. It's a company called Landlogical. It is in the public domain.
What do they do?
They do sort of land remediation, sort of groundworks type things. They have a facility at Stowe, which is a local one here, where they did decontamination. They extracted gas from the site and then used that for green energy. So sort of various engineering sort of infrastructure ground-based company rather than a house.
And what's their plan for?
They've got various ideas. We haven't seen anything in writing yet. So as and when stuff gets put onto a plan, I can give them some more updates.
They've acquired the whole of the Swanscombe Peninsula.
They've acquired the LLP, so the company
okay.
that was there. So that's the bulk of it, yes.
Right. And what are their obligations to manage the land which is within the ownership of the entity that they have acquired?
They've taken on things, for example, around environmental permitting, the stuff with the Environment Agency. Obviously, they now own the SSSI, so they've obviously taken on which in fairness they had a good understanding.
Right. Who owns Landlogical?
There is a number of people listed on their website.
All right, so it's a private company.
Yes.
Okay, got you. Right. Okay, right.
Housing numbers we've already spoken about, but there has been some good delivery at Ashmere and Alcredon 5B, which is the PRS scheme. So that's good to see that. It's good to see that coming forward. Planning committee, we've got the training day planned for early September. And I've carried out the inductions for the 2 new independent members. I popped in a small summary on planning reform. There's obviously an awful lot of stuff in the media and the announcements from government around various different areas. Neil and I have spoken around the planning committee thinking. There's also planned changes to roll out the national DM policies later in the year. So I think that probably the DM policies and the committee reforms are probably the ones that would be potentially impacting on us more than possibly some of the other areas. The dashboard, as usual, is in Annex A, and this year we're also reporting the infrastructure funding statements. This is an annual report that each LPA has to produce. There's various different bits of information. Table 1 includes the amount of money received during the year. Table 2, what's been spent on past 2 other bodies, and Table 3 is currently a list of what we are holding. But the purpose of that is to be transparent to the communities around how Section 106 money is collected and used. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions, Bob? Yes.
Just one, the Castle Hill Pub and Hotel site.
Yes.
So the pre-app discussions have been initiated there. Is that around a change of use, or is it around delivering something within the existing use type?
The planning permission that we granted for reserved matters for the pub and hotel expired. The pre-app looks to do something different on the site.
Right.
The area master plan and design code that's already been agreed does show commercial activity being there, a mixed use site.
Okay.
The design code actually, interestingly, again, is very specific. It does say a pub. So that's what the conversations are that we're having around the appropriate uses for that.
Okay. Thank you.
So, anything else? No? Good. All right. Thank you very much for that, Mark. Thank you. Kevin, Ebbsfleet Living.
Good afternoon. Again, I'll just take the paper as read. However, I'll just pull out a couple of highlights over the last reporting period. Firstly, to commend the planning team on Ashmere being shortlisted in this year's Housing Design Awards, the second year that the planning team have managed to secure.
Sorry, Chair, where is this? Street living report.
I've just spotted it's not made it onto diligent, has it?
It's not intelligent.
No, I've only just spotted.
It's in the combined pack.
Oh, yeah, but I always go to diligent.
All right, can we,
Okay, that's fine.
how quickly can it be put onto do? That's time consuming.
Right, so I'll go
That'd be mine.
to the report James circulated.
You got a hard copy or you got a copy?
Well, I can go into my email
Okay,
and find it.
all right, okay. Right.
Okay, then just to
Right.
pull out some highlights from the paper then. Firstly, that the Ashmere site was shortlisted for this year's Housing Design Awards. The second year we've had a shortlisted site in Ebbsfleet. Very commendable in that we're the only location to have secured that. There were 21 judges came to visit the site in May, including the chief planner from MHLG, who's now chairing the awards. So really good to help us showcase the good design that's emerging in the Garden City. And as I say, a pretty good reflection on the planning and design team having secured that.
And how many shortlisted?
The number of project awards and completed awards. Of the completed awards outside London, there are 7. And I'd say this is the only mainstream housing scheme that's been shortlisted in the country. So again, quite commendable from that
Right.
perspective.
Right.
There's about 12 shortlisted completed schemes in London. Again, because of the London plan, you tend to see more higher quality schemes coming through in London because they have to meet the housing plan, whereas things like housing standards, accessibility, and that which the planning team here have managed to negotiate is not something that's set in policy. Second thing, just to pull out the new heritage program that's kicked off in Northfleet. I think this is a particularly interesting program on 2 fronts. Firstly, that we've managed to repurpose Section 106 monies from Cable Wharf to invest in working with the local community, very much on celebrating the heritage of both the Cable Wharf site and Northfleet in general. A lot of work's coming through this program and working with local schools, and there's been a number of free tours around both the Cable Wharf site, which was formerly known as Rocherville Gardens, and other heritage sites around Northfleet. And that program will continue over the summer, working with the schools, and will result in a sort of education workbook that schools will be able to use in the future as well. So I think a really good project coming through that Section 106 funding. And finally, really, with the good weather emerging over the springtime, we had a huge upsurge in sports and physical activity events over the period. You'll recall in the resident satisfaction survey last year, this was one of the areas of concern, that we had a significant lack of physical activity in the area. So we've had 5 parallel projects that have all sort of kicked off over the period. One looking at mental health in fathers through football, another one looking at park fitness through a boot camp session, park tennis in Ebbsfleet, which has been incredibly popular, the big bike revival program, which again has seen a maximum number of bikes being refurbished at every one of the sessions there, and a new Better Points walking challenge. So quite a lot of activity kicking off for the springtime. Happy to take any other questions on the paper.
Board, yes. Yeah.
I think, as Kevin has said, and he speaks, I know, as a judge of this as well, but of the design of this.
But not influencing any decision.
No, but we should be, but you speak with some authority, having seen other competitor schemes, but I think we should be applauding the planning, Mark's team and Simon Harrison's team, along with the developers who have responded to the guidance. But it does show that these efforts have been worthwhile, and you can see it. One can see it with one's own eyes, and others have recognised it. So well done to everybody, and keep pressing on. So I think good.
Well said.
And just to say, the awards will be announced in September, so we won't know until September what the.
But it's the shortlisting.
Yeah, yes, being on.
We haven't decided yet. Sorry. All right, good, excellent work. Any other comments or observations on this? No, good. That's for noting. Thank you. Paul, Jen, I would say Jen and Paul, development infrastructure and enabling works.
Go first, Jen.
Okay.
Okay, afternoon, everybody. Assume the paper is taken as read. Thank you very much. Just to highlight a couple of updates. Springhead Bridge, now that the remedial works have been undertaken, KCC officers have visited site and they are due to issue the Section 38 certificate. We've already had the Section 278 certificate issued in the intervening period. We still need to arrange for the KCC's structures inspector to visit to sign off the principal inspection items. We have had some elements of vandalism down at the bridge abutments, which has hampered that somewhat, but we're on top of that and hoping to get that signed off in the next reporting period. Just to move on to Fast Track Bean Tunnel, as it was the subject of discussion earlier. So, as we've reported previously, planning was granted on the 7th of March this year. With regards to the legal agreement, we can pick up that in part 2, but those discussions are progressing. KCC's contract procurement is at sort of final stages. They understand who they want to use. There's a recommendation going to their procurement team next week for their director to sign off, albeit they have this BNG challenge to resolve Blue Water side of the tunnel, which they're currently working on. Their current predicted programme is for a construction start later this summer with an 18-month build programme, which would essentially have the tunnel opening up in winter 2026. We mentioned the alternative route earlier on. That will always remain. That's the secondary route, and that would always be used if there was any reason to close the tunnel once it's completed. So there will be the 2 routes affording access to Blue Water permanently. That's it. Happy to take any questions on my part of the paper. Thank you.
Right.
The only thing to add from myself, I think we covered probably Ebbsfleet Central under Caroline's item in terms of the big sort of update being around the work on the early market engagement. But otherwise, just as I do now most months while we're on site at Section 5, just note the progress again on the Ebbsfleet Green community buildings. Again, the photos are a couple of weeks out of date, so if anyone went down today, there's probably been additional progress. I know the trust and Valley had a visit the other week to the site to see their progress before the handover to the trust once complete. So.
When handovers, please do.
There's sort of one Weldon Hart, so the picture in figure 2 will be first. That will be in sort of early autumn, and Wellbeing Pavilion a bit later this year.
News. Big moment for the trust.
It's a big moment. It's a pleasure.
I'll
Thank
give
you.
them something to get busy on, won't it?
Thank you for mentioning the visit. We did go as a board and onto the construction sites at Weldon Hut and Weldon Pavilion. And I was thinking, as talking previously, they are incredible buildings, actually. They really are. Beautiful finishes, extraordinary spaces. We should submit them for this because we probably don't. Maybe I don't know, but I think they would stand a good chance, actually. They are very, very good buildings.
Yeah, what happens here is very high quality.
It does, exactly.
Yeah.
But we probably...
Damn you, Telegraph.
Exactly. No, but why not? No, exactly. It strikes your point, doesn't it, Nick, really? We should, as it were, quietly, if we won a few more awards and things for delivering.
Totally. We'll wait till they're finished and then there'll be more photogenic.
No, of course.
Yes.
But
yes.
it's short shrift. And one, I think, September, October, isn't it? The first one, the Weldon Hut neighbourhood hub. But soon.
Yeah, look, I'm sure our communications primo will be getting ready for what a wall of positive comments as these things open.
Yeah.
The RABA would have to be open the year, so I think it's definitely be worth.
Yeah.
Okay.
A bit of an interim.
But just to touch on it as we are, sorry, Jen, the business plans, is the trust taking revenue risk on these?
That's a complicated question, actually. For the hub, it is in part, actually, it is.
What kind of sort of services, what kind of revenue, what sort of, is this like?
Sorry, I'm struggling. It's actually quite complicated because we've got a young entrepreneur, a resident who's taking over Weldon Hart. We're working collaboratively with them in order to share the risk, if you like, particularly in the first year. But I don't want to.
No, understand. What kind of services are in there? Just to understand.
Well, it's almost what to live on. There is a small cafe there. There is literally well-being events. There'll be community events. As you know, there's outdoor space that you can go from one to the other. There's a whole raft of stuff.
All right.
And it's for hire, isn't it? So
It's for hire.
So
Yeah.
it's for hire too.
Yeah.
But
You can have a wedding there. Can you have a wedding
You
reception?
certainly could.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I don't want to go into too much detail because it's a commercial deal, obviously.
No, sure.
But you're right. We are taking some risk.
Okay. All right.
in the first year.
Good. All right. Thank you, Jen. Anything else, Jen?
No, that was all.
All right. Good. All right. Any comments, observations on that paper? So progress, it would appear there. When's the bridge get handed over? When's the end of that?
When's what, sorry?
When's the bridge fully adopted by KCC?
That's subject to matters we're going to be discussing in part 2, but we're hoping to be within the next, well, ideally by the end of this year, if possible. But that would, we can give a further update on that in part 2.
Right. Great. Okay. Good. Right. That's for noting. Gerard,
Thank you, Chair.
why don't we come into the finance operations and programme report?
Normal paper, but some additions on the annexes that I am seeking board approval for. I'll take the paper as read, but section 2 just talks about our revenue budget for 25-26. We've now had the formal funding allocation from the ministry, so we're now seeking board approval for the gross budget, which details are at Annex A. So we're looking to spend 7.5 million this financial year, which is made up of the 6.5 million allocation from the ministry and 1 million of receipts. On capital expenditure, 3.2. The latest forecast has been scaled back to just over 20 million. Details of why we've got a reduced spend for this year outlined at section 3.5. On other points that make board aware, section 6, health and safety. Unfortunately, the nicer weather has brought people out intent on trespassing. So we're in ongoing battle with repairing fences. And we have had to resort to dog units at particularly hot spells. So we'll have a dog unit in again at certain sites this weekend because we are anticipating it to be very warm. Section 11 talks about our delegations. So every year we have an annual review. ARAC reviewed this at the meeting this morning, and they were content. There are some changes to the delegations being proposed. The main one being that MHCLG given the EDC board an increased approval bond capital up to 30 million, which is excellent news.
Quite extraordinary delegation from the Treasury into MHCLG, isn't it? 250.
Yes.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
so that's being sought. The other items, there's a couple. There's a GIA, our internal auditor's recommendation, and then some few minor tweaks to some amends, which, as I say, ARAC seemed content when they looked at it this morning. There's a couple of HR policies that we've amended, the special leave policy and the equality policy. The explanations for those are 12.3 and 12.4. Basically, the special leave one is just around clarifying who can, what the maximum amount is, who can authorise it. These are very rare requests that we get, but we just thought it'd be sensible to have our up-to-date policy. The changes to the equality policy just clarify what data we are collecting and we'll do with it. The anti-fraud, bribery and corruption policies, again, has also had some minor changes to it. They're highlighted in yellow. ARAC reviewed that at the March meeting, I think it was, and they were content with those changes. So happy to take any questions, and I'm seeking, as it says at section 14, approval or an agreement in the first part for all those changes, please.
Board, any observations or comments? No. So we have, to be clear, we're agreeing the 25-26 revenue budget. We're approving the updated scheme of delegations document, the updated special leave policy, the updated equality policy, and the updated counter fraud policy. Is everyone happy with that? Great. Okay, that is all agreed. Thank you, Fred. We have no public questions for the first time this month. We have answered every possible question that could be posed to us under this current administration. Keep the questions coming, luminous moving forward. Great. That then concludes our part 1 meeting here of Ebbsfleet Development Corporation. We thank you very much for joining the meeting, and we look forward to you joining future meetings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Why don't we have a quick break and kick off again at